He went from a hustler on the dangerous corners of Brooklyn to the undisputed king of New York, only to be hunted down by the very fame and paranoia he tried to outrun. To understand Christopher Wallace, the man the world would come to fear, respect, and mourn as the notorious Big or Biggie Smalls, you have to step back into the brutal, concrete labyrinth of Bedford-Stuyvesant in the 1980s. It was an era when New York City was cracking open at the seams, fractured by the devastating crack cocaine epidemic, institutional abandonment, and a violent street economy that offered young black men two paths, a pine box or a prison cell. Chris Wallace lived right in the crosshairs, but beneath his imposing 6'3", 300-pound frame beat the heart of a literary savant. Long before he ever stepped foot inside a recording booth, Chris was an exceptional student at Bishop Loughlin Memorial High School, and later at George Westinghouse Career and Technical Education High School, where future icons like Jay-Z and DMX also walked the halls. Chris possessed a rare intellect. He scored high on English exams, excelled in creative writing, and carried a voracious appetite for reading. Teachers remembered a polite, sharp-witted teenager with an uncanny knack for observation. Yet the gravitational pull of the streets was too strong to resist. Raised by a hard-working single mother, Valletta Wallace, who sacrificed everything to keep him afloat, Chris watched his neighborhood transform into a war zone. By his mid-teens, the allure of easy money, designer clothes, and neighborhood status proved irresistible. He dropped out of school, traded his textbooks for the street corners of St. James's Place, and began slinging drugs to survive. He was a hustler by trade, but a poet by nature. In the quiet hours between deals, he would scribble complex, multi-syllabic rhymes into composition notebooks, storing away detailed character sketches of the junkies, dealers, cops, and survivors he witnessed every single day. Then came the voice. When Chris opened his mouth to rap, time seemed to slow down. It wasn't just a voice. It was a physical force of nature. A rich, buttery, effortless baritone that rolled across a boom-bap drum beat with the lazy, dangerous grace of a seasoned jazz musician. He didn't rush his words. He allowed them to sink deep into the listener's chest. He possessed an innate rhythmic cadence that made ordinary street tales sound like Shakespearean tragedies. His local demo tape caught the ear of a young, ambitious up-and-comer named Sean Puffy Combs, working at Uptown Records before founding his own powerhouse, Bad Boy Records. Puffy heard Biggie's raw recordings and immediately recognized a cultural titan. Puffy cleaned him up, put him in custom leather jackets and Coogie sweaters, and introduced him to the world under a moniker that echoed the gritty gangster films of his youth. The notorious Biggie's Eyes, New York wasn't just a city, it was a living, breathing character. He captured the dark humor, the sudden violence, the hustle, and the heartbreak of the inner city experience. He didn't just rap about the streets, he painted cinematic masterpieces in high definition, and the world was entirely unprepared for what was coming. When Biggie's debut album, Ready to Die, hit store shelves in September 1994, it didn't just top the charts, it detonated a cultural earthquake. Here was a project that served simultaneously as a hard-boiled street documentary. The album was also a deeply vulnerable psychological confession. Tracks like Juicy celebrated the ultimate American rags. Turch's Dream, inspiring millions with its triumphant hook. It was all a dream, used to read Word Up magazine. But tracks like Suicidal Thoughts revealed a dark, deeply tormented interior life. a young man drowning in his own success, paralyzed by the fear that his violent past would catch up to him. The album went multi-platinum overnight. Biggie was crowned the undisputed king of New York, breathing new life into an East Coast hip-hop scene that had long felt overshadowed by the West Coast G-Funk wave. Around this same time, his personal life underwent a seismic shift when he married R&B singer Faith Evans after a whirlwind courtship of just a few days. On paper, he was on top of the world. In reality, the foundation was beginning to crack. Fame brought immense wealth, but it also brought a suffocating layer of paranoia. The music industry was turning into a pressure cooker, fueled by corporate executives eager to monetize regional rivalries. And then came the night that changed everything, November 30th, 1994. Late that evening, Biggie and his management team arrived at Quad Recording Studios. As they walked into the lobby, they were ambushed by 3 armed men. Biggie was pistol-whipped, forced to the floor, and robbed of tens of thousands of dollars in diamond jewelry. During the struggle, one of the gunmen shot him multiple times. Miraculously, Biggie survived. He staggered upstairs to the studio floor, bleeding and battered, seeking help. But the physical wounds healed far faster than the psychological ones. In the paranoid aftermath of the Quad studio shooting, Biggie's world imploded. He became utterly convinced that the ambush had been orchestrated from within the New York music scene. And right across the country, watching every move with mounting suspicion, was Tupac Shakur. Tupac, who had been shot 5 times in that exact same Manhattan building just moments before the ambush, firmly believed that Biggie and Sean Combs had prior knowledge. What had once been a brotherhood, a mutual admiration between 2 young kings who shared stages, smoked blunts, and laughed together, instantly curdled into a cold, venomous mistrust. As media outlets, magazine editors, and unscrupulous label executives poured gasoline on the fire, the personal rift mutated into a full-scale national crisis, East Coast versus West Coast. Diss tracks were recorded, and the culture split down the middle. Biggie tried to distance himself from the toxic escalation, famously releasing tracks like Who Shot Ya?, which he insisted was written before the Quad shooting, though the industry interpreted it as a taunt. He wanted to focus on his music, his growing family, and his new protégés, Junior Mafia, but the narrative had grown too massive to control. The streets had chosen sides, and the media was counting down to a disaster. Biggie was carrying the weight of an entire coast on his broad shoulders, unaware that the shadow of tragedy was creeping closer with every passing day. September 1996 arrived like a hammer blow to the heart of American music. When Tupac Shakur was gunned down on the asphalt of Flamingo Road in Las Vegas, the entire hip-hop universe stopped breathing. For Biggie Smalls, the news wasn't just a tragic loss of a former friend. It was an existential terror. If they could do that to Tupac, the most heavily guarded, fiercely protected icon on the West Coast, who was safe? The atmosphere inside the music world grew heavy, suffocating, and terrifyingly dark. Biggie was thrust into an inescapable media storm. Reporters hounded him for reactions. Conspiracy theorists whispered that he was behind the Vegas hit, and law enforcement agencies placed him under intense, unblinking scrutiny. Biggie knew a massive target had been painted across his back. Anonymous death threats flooded Bad Boy Records daily. Friends and advisors urged him to stay out of California entirely, warning him that the West Coast was a hostile territory where vengeance hung in the air like smog. Yet, the commercial machinery of the music industry does not pause for grief or fear. By early 1997, Biggie was standing on the precipice of global superstardom. He had spent months locked away in a studio crafting a massive, ambitious double album titled Life After Death, a hauntingly prophetic title that would cement his legacy. The lead single, Hypnotize, was already dominating radio waves, and a second massive anthem, Mo Money Mo Problems was waiting in the wings. To promote the album, Biggie had to travel. In late February 1997, despite his profound misgivings and a deep, gnawing premonition of doom, Biggie packed his bags and flew to Los Angeles. He was traveling with a large entourage, hoping that heavy security would deter any foolish retaliation. For the first few weeks, things seemed surprisingly calm. He completed interviews, posed for magazine covers, and attended industry gatherings. But beneath the surface, the tension was palpable. Local street gangs were on high alert, and rumors swarmed through the Los Angeles underground that a price had been placed on the New York King's head. Friends noticed a profound change in Big E. The playful, swaggering confidence that defined his early career had been replaced by a heavy, hollow exhaustion. In his final interviews, he spoke openly about his fears, about wanting to move away from the violence. He felt the walls closing in, but he believed he only had a few more days of press obligations left before he could finally board a flight back to the safety of Brooklyn. He was wrong. The calendar had already reached March 8, 1997, and the final countdown had begun. The timeline of March 8th into the early hours of March 9th, 1997, reads like an intricate, inescapable trap.
Can you tell everybody what B.I.G stands for?
Business instead of gangs.
It was a warm Saturday night in Los Angeles. The city was hosting the 11th annual Soul Train Music Awards at the Shrine Auditorium, an event that had brought together the biggest names in black entertainment, hip-hop and R&B. Big E attended the ceremony, presenting an award and later walking the red carpet with an uneasy smile. Following the awards show, Vibe magazine and Quest Records were hosting a star-studded after-party. The after-party was held at the Peterson Automotive Museum on Wilshire Boulevard. Hundreds of people packed into the museum's exhibition halls. Inside, the energy was thick with industry elite, celebrities, and security personnel. Big E spent much of the evening holding court in the VIP section, surrounded by members of his entourage, including Lil' Kim and members of Junior Mafia. As the night wore on, the venue became dangerously overcrowded. Outside, the street filled with swarming crowds, eager fans, and local onlookers. Sensing a potential safety hazard, the Los Angeles Fire Department arrived on the scene shortly after 12:30 a.m. and ordered the party shut down immediately. The lights came up, the music cut out. Thousands of guests began spilling out into the cool night air, scrambling for their vehicles. This was the exact moment vulnerability turned into catastrophe. Big E calmly walked out of the museum, accompanied by his entourage, and piled into a dark green GMC Suburban. He sat in the front passenger seat next to driver Gary Lil Seasgrice, with two associates in the back. Two other SUVs carrying his security team and friends followed closely behind. They pulled out into traffic, heading back to their hotel in the Hollywood Hills. It was 12:45 a.m. As the Suburban approached the intersection of Wilshire Boulevard and South Fairfax Avenue, a red traffic light forced the vehicle to a complete stop. Moments earlier, a dark, late-modeled Chevy Impala SS pulled up quietly alongside the passenger side of Big E's Suburban. The interior lights of the Impala were dark. The tinted rear window rolled down smoothly. Before anyone in the vehicle could register the movement, a 9mm pistol emerged. 4 shots erupted in rapid, deafening succession. The bullets tore through the passenger door of the Suburban. 4 rounds slammed directly into Christopher Wallace. The impact shattered his clavicle, pierced his heart, lung, colon, and liver, and paralyzed his nervous system. As the Chevy Impala accelerated through the red light and vanished into the Los Angeles night, the Suburban lurched forward in chaos. Panic erupted inside the vehicle. Realizing the horror of what had just occurred, the driver slammed on the gas. Racing frantically through the dark streets toward Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, just blocks away. Doctors and trauma surgeons swarmed the emergency bay, performing an emergency thoracotomy right there in the trauma room to try and restart his heart. They fought desperately for over 45 minutes to save his life. It was hopeless. At 1:15 a.m. on March 9, 1997, Christopher Wallace was officially pronounced dead. He was 24 years old, exactly 6 months after the assassination of Tupac Shakur. And instantly, the echoes of history repeated themselves with chilling precision. Just 16 days after his murder, Biggie's prophetic double album, Life After Death, was released to the public. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200. The album eventually sold over 10 million copies and earned diamond certification. Songs like Hypnotize and Notorious Thugs became timeless anthems, while haunting tracks like Sky's the Limit served as an emotional farewell from a young man who knew his time was running out. The world mourned a generational talent cut down in his absolute prime, recognizing that hip-hop had lost its reigning monarch. Yet, the commercial triumph was shadowed by an agonizing institutional failure. Just like the investigation into Tupac Shakur's death, the Los Angeles Police Department's murder investigation into Biggie Smalls quickly hit a brick wall of silence, bureaucratic incompetence, and alleged corruption. Despite numerous eyewitnesses, traffic cameras, and endless tips, the case languished for years. Investigators later explored explosive theories linking corrupt lap officers moonlighting as security for death row records to the orchestration of the hit, suggesting Biggie's murder was retaliation for Tupac's death. Investigative journalist Randall Sullivan laid out these staggering allegations in his landmark book Labyrinth, exposing a web of police cover-ups and institutional negligence. Despite civil lawsuits, task force reviews, and millions of pages of documents, no one has ever been convicted of the murder of Christopher Wallace. Decades have passed. The tapes have aged, key witnesses have passed away, and the files sit gathering dust in municipal archives. Yet, the ghost of the notorious B.I.G. still looms large over modern music. His cadence, his storytelling, and his unmatched flow remain the gold standard against which every modern rapper is measured. He went from the dangerous street corners of Brooklyn to international royalty, leaving behind a legacy that time cannot erode. The mystery remains unsolved. The wound remains wide open. Two kings, two coasts, two unsolved tragedies that forever changed the soul of American culture. The music continues to play, but the questions linger in the dark left, echoing in the empty space between life and death.